Okay, so before we get started on the lab, we need to make sure that we have the two things we need installed on our computer. So the first is the R programming language, which is a language that is especially useful for data analysis. That's what we're going to be writing code in. And then we're also going to install RStudio, which is an integrated development environment. I'll just show you an example of that really quick, which is a sort of software tool we're going to use to write R code in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install R. I already have this on my computer, so it may say some things like updating, but if you're installing for the first time, it should be pretty similar. So I'm going to the r-project.org, which is the R project for statistical computing. And I'm going to click this link to download R, and it pulls up a bunch of websites. These are all mirror sites where the R language is hosted. I can just pick this first one, it's fine. And if I'm doing it on a Linux machine, I would click this. I'm doing it on a Mac, so I'm doing this. You may have Windows. R and RStudio should both work on Windows. I know many of you have that. Okay, and I'm going to get the latest release. This version of the R language is called Action of the Toes. No idea what that's all about. But I'm just going to go ahead and click this to download it. Depending on your system, if you have like an older operating system, you may need to download older packages. But for the most part, what I'm going to say is for this class, make sure you're using the latest release of R, and also make sure that your operating system is updated to support it. Okay, so I'm going to save it. Okay, and there it is on my desktop, and I'm just going to double click and walk through the installer. So continue, pretend I've read that, pretend I've read the license, agree to it, go ahead and install it. The standard install location is fine, and I'm going to type my password. And now it is installed. Okay, so now that we have R installed, I'm going to go ahead and install RStudio. So RStudio is a software tool that makes it really easy and nice to write R code in, allows us to explore data, to visualize it. We can write R without RStudio. We cannot use RStudio unless we've installed R, which is why we installed R first. So I'm going to go ahead and download RStudio. And again, I already have this, so it may say some things about updating, but yours will be likely pretty similar. If you work for a company, you may have to pay for it, but as a student, you can get the open source RStudio desktop for free. So just going to go ahead and click downloads. Brings me down here to supported platforms. Most of you are going to want this Mac OS 10.12, or if you're using it, if you're watching this video in a future semester, there may be an updated number, but that's what you want. If you're running a Windows machine, you'll want this one. Everybody else, if you're using Ubuntu or Fedora, most of you are not, you can pick your version. So I'm going to install it for Mac. I'm just going to open it. And it's opening, and it popped up there, and all I'm going to do is just drag this to my applications folder. In my case, it's going to ask me if I want to replace it, and I'll just say yes, and type my password, and it copies over, and I can go into my applications folder now, and there's RStudio, and RStudio is launching after it verifies it, and yes, I do want to open it. Okay, and in the next video, we'll go over exactly what RStudio is and how it works. Just for now, you can make sure you have R installed by clicking this button at the bottom here, just to pull up the console, and we're just gonna write the most basic function we can think of to make sure R is working. So print, and I'm just gonna put my name and hit return. And I didn't get an error there, which means it can actually find the R language. If you get some kind of error, it may say something like R is not installed, R is not running, then you'll know that your R language hasn't installed correctly. Okay, in the next video we'll start going through RStudio and the assignment for the week.